welcome everyone to Hathor Hosts. I am so happy to be here in your living rooms or kitchens or lounges or who knows, whatever it might be. But I am delighted to be here and I am so excited to be chatting to Nathalie Boltt this evening. Nathalie Boltt, who is also a fellow South African. Good evening, Abby. Hello, everyone. Lovely to see everybody joining. I'm just going to wait for Nat to send me a request, and that way we will know that she's here and in the conversation, and then we can carry on. So, Nathalie, I think you need to send me a request to join the conversation, and then we will be A for away. Yeah, she says she's there, but now the request's not coming through. Oh no, this can't be happening to us. Right, bear with me, everyone. We haven't had this happening for a while. Bear with me. I'm going to do that and add you if that works. I'm sure it will. Lovely jubbly. Technology, eh? Yay!
Hey, sorry, I was trying to catch you on my computer and it didn't work.
No, it's all right. Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? I'm plugging us in so we don't run out of battery while we're talking.
I'm going to turn the volume up a teeny bit. Bear with me. There we go. How lovely to see you.
You too.
And who would have thunk it in this crazy mixed up world that here we are, something like 20 something years later, having a conversation on technology.
Yeah, thank God for technology. I mean, especially during COVID, right? What would we be doing without it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, welcome, and thank you so much for agreeing to have a chat with me and talking about your life. Oh, you're welcome. We got a lot to cover, and they only give us an hour, so I'm just going to jump straight on in. You were born in South Africa. Where in South Africa?
Johannesburg. Randburg, doll.
Very nice. I was born in Parkview and then lived in Parkhurst. Amazing.
Yeah, nice. All the parks.
Automatically became very South African there.
Shocking.
And what sort of a kid were you?
I was a middle child, and so I was desperate for attention. And also I was the only girl. And so the boys were kind of, into their stuff, and I was always singing and dancing and just, on stage, being noisy and just wanting to attract attention in any way.
Yeah.
Yeah, always
I'm here.
Yeah, I'm here, and then sort of loud and extroverted, but very sensitive as well, and I think only later you realize what that all means, because it's a tough industry.
Yeah,
yeah,
indeed. I think anyone who's weathered the storm in this industry kind of knows that.
Yeah.
Do you remember what your kind of first inklings were that this was something you wanted to do with your life, to perform?
It's funny, I was just looking at my son's first grade 1 book, and they said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And he'd drawn a picture and he said, I want to be a chocolate maker. And I remember drawing a picture of me in a very red dress holding a microphone with long flowing Farrah Fawcett locks, and I said I wanted to be a singer. So that was my first intention. Yeah, something. But
so how old were you then?
I was about six or seven.
Right.
I'd started dancing at the age of 3. There weren't any dancers in my close family, but we do have violinists and singers in my grandparents.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of musicians in my extended family. But, I was not good on stage. I was big on stage fright, I discovered. So thank God for the screen. So, I went through all of the exams and all the stuff you do, doing your ballet and that stuff and festivals. But, yeah, I had a couple of experiences where I just went blank, which now you look at people that studied, and it's like, what do they call it? It's like the being hijacked by your amygdala. It's like your brain literally freezes. And so, nobody really kind of could tell me that. I just thought that I was just very bad at it, and always had this danger of just being hijacked by blank on stage. And so I think that even though I danced even until university, and was with a dance company that toured the world, etc. Well, the world, we did a bit of international touring. I was always scared. It wasn't so much fun, it was more fear for me. So eventually I kind of thought, why am I doing this?
Yeah. Oh, and it's the most awful feeling. I remember about 10 years ago now, I was in a kind of very groundbreaking production of the musical Cabaret. And it was groundbreaking because it won many Olivier Awards here. And they kind of tweaked the ending, and it wasn't all like jazz hands, you know. It was very, they go into the gas chamber. Like this play, the musical ended with people being gassed. And there was just sort of silence in the audience, you know. And I was playing the Nazi prostitute, Fräulein Kost. And I had to sing, great role. And I had to sing the reprise of Tomorrow Belongs to Me. So it was just a very short little bit. And one night, and in this particular moment in our production, the kind of lights would go down, the spotlight would hit me, everything would freeze. It was in a party scene and everyone would just sort of freeze. And I started the song, and we'd been doing it about 6 months, and it just gone.
It's so
and I just remember that feeling. It was the most terrifying thing I've ever experienced, because I was like, I didn't know, I have no idea what I sang. I somehow made it fit. But I remember the musical director going,
it's like blacking out. You know? It's like blacking out. And I mean, I take my hat off to you. You've had a wonderful stage career, and I've always shied away from it from those early years. For my fans, have a look at Suanne and everything she's done. I grew up with her on my screen, going, oh, imagine this, Suanne Braun.
And here you are.
And you, I mean, started off presenting, and then, you know, just blossomed into this amazing stage and screen career. So check out Suanne, everybody.
Oh, thank you. What a lovely thing to say. Anyway, enough about me. On to you. So the South Africans watching will absolutely know you from this. It was a groundbreaking series. People call it a soapy, Isidingo, which means the need. It's all about a kind of mining. And you played a character called Joey Ortlep. How did that come about?
Oh, you know, talk about like growing up with your heroes, watching people like you on screen, and then watching Isidingo, and I just, what a show. So it had been going, I think at least 3 years before I got on it, and it was the show that shaped South Africa in my mind, you know, because yes, it was, but they called it a daily drama. Of course, you would say it's a soapy, but we covered so much amazing ground, and I used to watch it and just be like, just desperate to be part of this story. And you know, I remember when the first interracial kiss happened on Isidingo, so because the apartheid government was changing, and all these things came to the fore, you know, from, you know, what do we do about gambling, addiction, AIDS, interracial, everything? How do we show this rainbow nation? What do we do about, you know, homosexuality? We were so cloistered and so conservative from our apartheid government, and just how everything around us had been censored. But anyway, so I remember watching, like, it made front page news that there was an interracial kiss on Isidingo with Bianca Amato and beautiful
man. I can't remember his name either, but beautiful man. But it'll come to us.
Anyway, and so I had been on stage with Death of a Salesman, and I was, you know, I trained at Rhodes University, beautiful Andrew Buckland and Reza DeVette and those sort of icons, Sandra Prinsloo, and then I moved to Joburg, like you do. You're always trying to get to the center. So, sorry, I'd been in Grahamstown, came back to Joburg, and you know, struggled like everybody else. Was a casting director, hated it, just wanted to be in front of the camera, and then got onto this play, worked with Bill Flynn and a couple of people, and just started to get some kind of confidence. Chopped my hair, dyed it blonde, and I don't know, that seemed to kind of, like, sometimes you just do a big shift like that and people go, oh, sorry, who are you? Oh. And I think it was just part of like a chapter that I was kind of opening and feeling confident, maybe because I was off stage. And and I auditioned, and they'd said, do a monologue, and I wrote a monologue. So I write a lot of material. I'm a writer now. And oh yeah, and they seem to respond to this weird sort of thing that I just threw out there, you know. And the next thing I had Ilse van Heermert, another icon who was directing on Isidingo. She kind of saw me one night and she went, "Everyone's talking about you." And Hilary Bletcher, who was the exec producer, cast me. It was a shift from a male exec producer to a female exec producer, and that's pretty much how I got on. I think, you know, I wouldn't have made it onto that show otherwise. And so for 4 glorious years, I went from being a very, very average, very nervous actor. Later, when I left the show, Ilse said to me, "We were going to fire you every week." They would say, when are we firing Nathalie?
No.
Thanks for telling me that. But, you know, people beat up soapies or dailies. But I always say this to the people I've ended up coaching. If you ever have the opportunity to get in front of the camera on a daily basis, you must do it, because you become relaxed.
Exactly.
And yeah, and you stop trying to do a good job. And it's actors, just, you know, 95% of actors are trying so hard to do a good job that they appear to be acting, whereas you want to appear to be being. And so I did my 4 years on Isidingo, and I, you know, the actors on that show, Ilse Klink and the like, were so bloody brilliant. And I just through osmosis finally understood how to act and be like them. So that's what Isidingo taught me. And I got a lot of exposure. I became a household name. I was on the front covers of blah, blah, blah. You know, it's like, I guess, I'm not sure if presenting was your first gig, but like you said, it opens the world up, you know.
Completely. And I think it's hard for people to imagine now, because of course we didn't have social media then. I'm just sorry, we're so old, we didn't have social media.
We had a website for Isidingo that I used to try and always connect with fans.
Dial-up modem.
Yeah, it took 100 years. You could only see your comment the next day.
But it was extraordinary, because I had Cliff Simon on this show as well, and we talked about this unbelievable, the passion that people have, kind of like people have now for Penelope Blossom in Riverdale, except now people are able to interact with us, like tonight, and on other platforms, which they couldn't do. So it made you a household name. You start to work a lot. In the midst of this, you get cast as the lead in a German film called The Weiße Afrikaner. I hope that's right. My father is Deutsch, but I speak kind of Deutsch. Je parle français.
Oh, well, very good. Awesome.
So you are completely bilingual.
Yeah, ich bin Deutsch. Mein Vater ist Schweizer. So I grew up bilingual. My dad is Swiss, and where I was, there was a really good German school. So they just thought, well, why not learn, you know, German, which all Swiss people speak, and then I'd be able to speak to my relatives. And I picked it up immediately, as you do when you're little. And so I went to this German school for half of my primary schooling, and then I went to Hyde Park High School, just like a, you know, normal English speaking government school. But of course, it stood me in great stead. I never actually had gone to Germany through the entire time of being a German child in South Africa.
Yeah.
But then I ended up with this movie, Der Weiße Afrikaner, meeting the most fantastically funky Germans, and just knew I had to go to Berlin. But from the ones who were from Berlin, I loved it, you know, already.
Yeah.
And then did one of my Nathalie Boltt moves, which honestly I can't explain. I've done them several times, where I just bought a plane ticket and, knowing nobody, just arrived in Berlin.
Extraordinary.
And I mean, also before the internet.
Peak of your career as well. Kind of, you know, had you planned to move there, or was it just a kind of, I'm just going to go and have a little look around?
You know, I mean, in a way, in so many ways, I was an idiot. So I just kind of went, I'm leaving Isidingo. I'm going to go and pursue my international career. You know, my ego was huge, which was, you know, helpful and destructive, as egos tend to be, because I didn't kind of like leave the doors open at Isidingo. I just left. You know, this is me. This is my moment. And I arrived in Berlin like I think I'd managed to find like a room to stay in, but that's all you had. Like the rest was just finding a landline and phoning people.
Yeah.
So it's not like you could just arrive with your phone, you know, your smartphone,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
just like Google whatever you need. So I arrived there. I got food poisoning on the plane, and was really sick to begin with, and then kind of went, "What have I done?" But through the angels that have always protected me, I connected with wonderful people almost instantly, and had a blast and found a German agent. And then from there went to my British agent in London, Roger Charteris, you know, who related to my South African agent, and kind of developed a representation in Europe.
Right.
Yeah, and that led to George Gently.
Fantastic. And then you decided you were working, and then decided you were going to go and try Los Angeles, which is where you had always kind of envisaged you would end up. And
yeah, I'd been waiting. I'd applied for my green card while I was still at Isidingo, and everything that involves, which is so difficult, and took years. Yeah, nightmare, right?
Mine too. Like, well, weirdly, mine came through very quickly, and then everything else went tits up. But you know, that's another day's story.
Everything's going to be wonderful the moment you have that card, and then you're like, oh no, just join the queue, baby.
And then I didn't work for a year, and I was like, what?
Oh yeah, at least a year. Yeah, so while I was waiting for the green card, I was like slotting it all in, you know, Europe's happening, got the representation. And then the green card came through, and off I went to LA, and writer strike.
Yeah.
So I mean, no one can work.
So what happened then? What did you decide to do then?
You know, so I was there, so excited, and everyone around me the moment I arrived in LA was just like, oh my God, we don't know what we're going to do. This could be years. What are we going to do? There's nothing. Have you heard? Have you heard? It's kind of like COVID now, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I was just going to say.
And so and also, you know, always with this South African currency that just went nowhere overseas. So I very quickly was broke.
Right.
And my husband he had been, following his dream of working on animated films.
Right.
And so he got a job which was on the other side of the planet, and I just went, well, there's nothing happening here and I have no money, so let's, you know, reconvene in New Zealand, where he'd got a job with Peter Jackson, and we thought we'd be there for 3 months.
Yeah. And something 11 years or something?
Yeah, 12 years later.
I mean, looking through your life, it's quite interesting because travel is a massive part of it, and this thing of sort of upping and relocating and having to adjust to that. So here you are now, literally on the furthest place to South Africa, away from the rest of your family. At least your husband was there and working with Peter Jackson.
Yeah.
But how on earth did you kind of regroup and go, okay, now I have to start again? And that accent, you had to learn the Kiwi accent, not easy.
Yeah. I mean, you know, we did that sort of I'll go backwards and forwards idea. And we thought we'd sort of start trying for children, you know, vaguely. And I was instantly pregnant. It was crazy. So suddenly I had this wonderful job on George Gently, which is, you know, this really top.
I was going to say, Nathalie is completely underselling it, everybody, because basically it was working with Martin Shaw, who is a complete national institution and treasure here, and has been a star for something like 4 or 5 decades.
Exactly.
And playing in, somebody's been a bit rude there. We won't have that here. We don't like that. Anyway, sorry, that threw
trolls, me. Don't feed the trolls.
So how was that experience working on George Gently? Did you fly from New Zealand to Ireland?
Yeah, I was horribly ill because I was pregnant. I actually found out on set, not on set, but while I was shooting on George Gently, that I was pregnant, and it felt instantly hideous. And then I had to come back and forth a couple of times, and I just didn't think it would be like that, you know. As an actor, all you're thinking is, I'm just gonna work until I show, you know. And on Isidingo, 2 actors, female actors, had gotten fired for being pregnant. You know, you could do that. You could do that then, because in your contract it says you can't change to more than 2 sizes, dress size, or they can write you out. So that's how they would get rid of people. So, you know, we went into, I hope it's changed, but when I was pregnant,
I hope so too.
I went to an industry of just, you know, well, keep it to yourself as long as you can. So I was very ill, and I'm flying from New Zealand to Ireland. I was green. I mean, you know, if you look at my show reel, and I was playing German on that, so that again the German came in really handy. German accent, a little bit of German, with Martin, who was just lovely and stunning. And you know, I mean, like, it's almost like British acting royalty is royalty. I was terrified.
Well, good.
I remember, like, I found out that he loved birds and bird watching, and so I did research, and I would talk to him about birds. I mean, obviously, I love birds too. I'm a conservationist, so I tried to just connect with him on some level, and he was charming and divine. But I was sick and dying, and all I wanted to do was go home and cry. You know, and I mean, we were shooting at this time in this tiny little Irish port, and it was a period piece, and they had all this hacked up fish. It was meant to be a fishing town, and every day the fish would smell worse, and I was so nauseous. And then they would do this like bouffant hairstyle with like tons of hairspray, and everything's just so sensitive. So yeah, it wasn't the way I pictured it at all. And then that show was complete, and it was wonderful, and I went back to New Zealand and had a baby. And then the financial crisis hit, and work started slowing down, and also I just didn't care anymore. I had a baby, and I had terrible insomnia. So suddenly my life was completely different. I had no family to help me, and lovely friends, but none of them old friends. So I was very alone.
I wanted to just touch on that, because I was profoundly moved by your Bite the Bullet story or confession. I don't. Yeah, she's absolutely fantastic. And Amanda Tapping was on Hathor Hosts, and we chatted a bit about hers as well. And I think what's really fantastic about it is that it allows people with a very high public profile, such as yourself, to discuss stuff that isn't necessarily always talked about, and particularly on social media, where everybody's terribly like, oh my God, look, my life is perfect and amazing. And I was really shocked to discover that you actually stopped acting altogether. You kind of stepped away from it. Can you tell us a little more about that time? I mean, you said you had horrific insomnia and kind of alone, isolated, a bit like now with people going through COVID.
And I mean, and that's like, you know, we started off by saying thank God for the internet, because you know, even then, like, the social media thing really wasn't that big, and certainly, like, even the beginning of Facebook, people weren't that open about their feelings, you know. And now there's so much you can access, going, oh my God, I'm not alone, it's not just me, I'm not the only one who's depressed, anxious, or, you know, whatever. And I still had this like South African training of, you know, just project success. You know, I don't know if it's a South African thing. I think it is partially, but it's also just me and my upbringing. And I wasn't coping, and I'd had this massive physical change, and it would not allow me to sleep. And so every day was just this kind of like eyes wide, oh my God, how's today going to be? Although I did manage to do some work, I did District 9 during that time, actually. I was starting to turn down work. In fact, I turned down District 9, which was hilarious, because all this effort
so there you are in New Zealand, away from Hollywood, and Hollywood comes a calling and a rapping and a knocking on the door, and you go, no,
thank you. So, I'm done. Like, I was so exhausted. I looked like, I mean, you know, watch District 9. I looked like I felt I hadn't slept. I had a really weird haircut. I'd gone for like a Jane Fonda Clute haircut. I don't know why, but and I was really overwhelmed, and in a state of shock, physically and mentally, of everything. I got this call saying, look, they're like recutting and really reshaping this amazing film. Peter Jackson's on board, and they need you and they want you. And I said, I've just had a baby. I can't cope with anything. And I kind of read the brief. It said something about, you know, aliens addicted to cat food, and I was like, oh no more B grade stuff.
No one's gonna watch this.
No one's gonna watch this. just like go with your instinct, completely wrong. And strangely, like the one time I said no, they came back like so many times saying, please, whatever you need for your baby, we'll hold your baby, we'll care for it. Just give us an hour. And I went, oh, okay. And off I went, and they literally did that. We shot all of that, and I got a lot of screen time. We shot it in a few hours.
And that was all done in New Zealand, wasn't it?
All done in New Zealand, yes.
So
yes.
strange.
My big South African break on the biggest South African blockbuster for decades. And we did in New Zealand. So, in that sense, I felt like, oh, okay, maybe work will come to me, and it always works out. And but then it sort of became a trickle. And then I realized how very small an industry I was in, and then the timing of the financial crisis. So, again, just like stuff happens.
But interestingly, you discovered during this time of kind of, well, I was going to say trauma, but it was a traumatic time, and being kind of alone and not having the work and being awake all the time, you discovered that you had this, which had already surfaced with the writing, but that you are a phenomenal storyteller and that you could write. So you wrote and adapted and co-produced and co-directed The Silk.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, yes, I think part of the writing, I mean, I was a writer before I got my Isidingo break, was just, I became very aware of how actors and performers, the old joke, if you want to hear an actor complain, give them a job. And, you sit around and everybody would just moan about the quality of the story or how it was being directed or the agent or whatever. And I just thought, this is just the same thing on repeat. I wonder what it means to actually make a film. Like, how hard would that be? And then, thank God I had a partner, Claire Burgess, and she brought me the story. I'd acted in her short film, and I said, I wonder what it would be like to do another one. Would you like to work with me? And she said, look at this story, this beautiful story that had been in print for 50 years. And so I read it and went, do you want to do this? And she went, do you want to do this? And so we spurred each other on to write and co-direct this first short film. Which I'll put back on my website, but it turned out it's really beautiful.
It's beautiful. I watched it yesterday, and it's absolutely beautiful, gentle, beautifully told, very moving.
Thank you. Yeah, and and it was just like one of those things of, wow, it's so complicated to make a film, and you need so much humility, and you need so much help, so many people, being generous. And so that's a really humbling experience as an actor. And it made me a much better actor, much more appreciative.
Yeah, I bet it changed everything moving forward, because your next project was the polar opposite of The Silk, which was a comedy which you wrote and acted and directed called Vajazzle.
Have you seen it? I'll send it to you.
No, please do. I tried to see it. I watched all the trailers and obviously gathered what it was about.
Yes, I've taken it offline. I used to put it out every Valentine's, but now my son's of that age where he's like, Mum, please don't. So I'm like, okay, I'll send it to like friends who ask me. But I mean, basically that was me, a few years in, just going, I would like, feeling like a suburban housewife, and then just going, fuck this, I can't do this anymore. What I want to do is something crazy, and I just want to flip the table. You have no idea like where we come from. South Africa's a crazy place. South Africans are in your face mad. And the culture in New Zealand, as adorable and so many like wonderful positive traits about New Zealand people, I kept biting my tongue. I kept finding that I would like go, oh, that's probably a little bit rude, Nat. No, you shouldn't say that. And so, and then one day I'd had like a really, really strong cup of coffee, and I'd had this idea for ages. And I told my husband, who ends up editing my film, and he went, oh, no, please don't. And I went, watch me.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I wrote Vajazzle in half a day. Like, it just came out of me. It's such fun and so fast. And then, you know, we made the most hilarious crowdfunding campaigns. They're
Yes,
all
I love
super
those.
naughty, in your face, like super tongue in cheek. And
Yeah.
people weren't doing a lot of that yet. Like, now everything's kind of full frontal nudity and hectic. You can watch all kinds of crazy stuff online.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was like quite sort of dodge. But to their credit, everybody, like all the parents at my son's school, they all rocked up on the premiere night, like the opening night. And I mean, I'd asked them to just, we'd done so many hilarious, naughty things. We got, like, you know, sponsorship from, you know, adult toy stores. And
Yeah.
it was just, the whole thing was a scream, and the whole place filled out. And we watched the show, and they were shrieking with laughter. And so I felt like this was, you know, I'd accessed all of us who'd been biting our tongues trying to be good new parents, going, I just want to be a bit of crazy. And so that was that experience, and I loved it. And I'm sure, like you know, it was that other side, that flip side, where you just like, and I do comedy, because all the seriousness is one gear, but then what's underlying it is just this, like,
exactly,
wanting to, like, rip the whole top off, you know.
Yeah, and it's the most liberating thing. I mean, I've talked about this before a little bit on Hathor Host, but the first time I ever did stand up, and that kind of again came out of I joined an improv group. I joined the Groundlings in Los Angeles, and I was with them for 6 months and worked my way up steadily. And my tutor kept saying, "You're funny, man. Like, you're really funny. Like, you're, you know." And I said to my manager, "I want to be funny. I can do comedy." And she's like, "Honey, you don't look like a comedian. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
you're just like, you're a straight actress.
What does a comedian look like?"
Yeah. And in those days, there was much more, I think, delineation between roles. I think it's much better now, but it was the stupid thing, because I had long, sort of red, lustrous hair, which are not so lustrous anymore due to a very bad self-COVID haircut. But never mind, it's coming right slowly but surely.
It's taken 6 months to recover from mine. Yes,
I was a bit like, you know, the monk, the pudding bowl, like, I did that. Not good. Anyway, so
but just from that face, I can tell that you can do comedy. We don't mind, like, going for it. Yeah.
So you sort of touched on what I was going to say about, because you kind of said you had a complete new respect when you were making a film for how difficult it is to get something made, to get it on screen. So what was the most challenging thing about producing your own work, and equally the most rewarding?
You know, it's always raising the damn money, you know.
Yeah.
So the writing you can do by yourself for nothing, and then, I mean, I've always found that there are filmmakers, you know, wherever I've lived, are as if you're excited about something, people jump on board. They want in, you know, and so that's no problem. Finishing it is really hard. So I'm very lucky that I have an incredibly talented editor for a husband. That's one of his many skills. So finishing it is hard, but raising the money is the pain for me. I don't like, and like a lot of creatives, we don't like to talk about money. It's the icky part, you know.
Yeah.
And so the crowdfunding was awesome, but I had so much help putting these campaigns together. And then, you know, you scrape together a few $1,000s. It's, people think you raise $80,000 to make a film. You don't. You raise 6 or 8 if you're lucky, you know. And so that's how we did it. But the first one, Claire and I, the co-producer director, we just went, we applied for funding. They said no, and we just went, screw it, let's do it. And that's the advice that I give to people who are making their own films. Don't wait for permission from other people to tell your story. If you love it, then don't let it die. It's your responsibility to keep your baby, which is, you know, anything that you make is your baby. You keep your baby alive. You wouldn't produce it and then leave it in the street to starve.
Yeah.
So give it life, and that does mean, especially at the beginning, putting a bit of your own cash in. People always say don't put money into your own projects. Sure, if it's a feature film, don't bankrupt yourself.
Yeah.
But the rest of it is like, I get so angry with all the stupid paperwork that you have to fill in to apply for a little bit of, you know, like crumbs.
Yeah.
Which you could have been putting into your crowdfunding campaign. All that energy, you could just be going forward and filming your project already. So yeah, don't wait for permission. If you apply for funding, great. If they say no, screw it, just get on with it.
Keep going. Yeah.
Yeah.
Excellent advice. Do you hear that, everyone?
Yeah. And who are the people giving you funding? So often people like that have never made their own film.
Yeah.
So, you know, who are they to choose what gets made?
Exactly. And what better way to get somebody to be motivated than to say no, I think.
Yeah.
Everyone
I think that's
is
the bottom of it, right?
exactly.
Yeah. The real bottom
Everyone
line.
here is sorry. Everyone here is screaming Riverdale, 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 and I sort of feel very cognizant of the time again. So I'm going to jump straight. I mean, we've sort of left out some of your amazing credits, which we, if there's time, we'll get back to at the end. So in the middle of all this, you're in New Zealand. What takes you to Vancouver? What makes you up and move to Vangroovy?
Yeah, Vancouver. So my husband, who was working with Peter Jackson, they did the Planet of the Apes franchise, which was shot in Vancouver, and then a lot of the post-production, you know, that real cutting edge, turning people into creatures, motion capture and facial motion capture, that was all being done at Weta Digital, which is Peter Jackson's digital company, and that's in Wellington where we were living. And I'd always heard Vancouver was just this amazing city, and so we had the opportunity to travel here and stay here for a while they shot. And when I was here, I was allowed to work. I got a work permit. And so after, you know, all these years of really kind of not even considering myself an actor, really auditioned. And my second audition was Riverdale.
Amazing.
Yeah. And it really felt like the universe had been kind of like, you know, holding me back, like pushing its hand against my forehead, going, not yet, not yet, not yet, not yet, and go.
Amazing.
So,
all the doors opened.
Yeah. You're like hammering on the door in some way, you know. And I mean, it was a bizarre experience because I went with zero expectations, which is always the best way to go. And
did you not? You ended up reading it. You didn't even read for Penelope Blossom.
I went dressed for the wrong role. I dressed up as Hermione Lodge because I'd misread the script. Dressed completely wrong. They didn't actually have Penelope lines, so I just delivered whatever they put in my hands. And then they kind of went, "Why are you dressed like that?" I went, "Oh shit, sorry." But Lee Krieger, the pilot director, and Roberto Sacasa, Aguirre Sacasa, who's the showrunner and writer, creator, they kind of saw my initial audition, and I guess there was just something that she's a very weird character, and they wanted her, you know, we were talking about that, the reference clip that they then gave me for my callback was Mrs. Danvers in Rebecca.
A really interesting reference as well, because Riverdale is, I would imagine, a relatively probably broad spectrum audience, but quite young, and that's an interesting reference for a younger, you know, something that's being geared for a younger audience.
Yes, exactly. But you know, this is where all our theatre sports and, you know, groundlings and all of the training, the improvisation training comes in, because we're so sensitized to watching something and going, oh, yep, got it. Which is voice, which is posture, which is the physicality of it. And it was such a, you know, just something that I've just felt instantly, I know her. I don't know why, but you know, I've got this very Britishy, Catholic-y background on my mum's side, and so I went, I know who that is, and so I brought that, and the director went, can you just stay here for a few hours until I've gone through like everybody else, and then I'd like to work with you. And we just worked, and it was so much fun, because you'll know, like, so often, most of the time, you don't get to work. You get to do your audition and thanks, bye, next. You know, you got 30 seconds sometimes. And so I hung out there, and we tried it all, you know, a whole bunch of different ways. And then I got the call saying, if you want it, you've got it. And I kind of went, what is it? Because I don't know what the CW is. Is that Canada? What does the W stand for? Mine, you know, because I've been in New Zealand and like, you know, like lost for. So the next thing, you know, we did the pilot, and it was beautiful, and then you wait to see if it gets picked up, and it got picked up, and then it became this just explosive hit.
Juggernaut. I mean,
but you know, also like it was also interesting times because Roberto and the team kind of encouraged us to do this kind of live tweeting while we were watching the series. And at first our numbers weren't that great, but it was the crazy combination of launching during the summer or launching the full season during the summer when people didn't have, I guess, the teenage show that they wanted at the time. Now there's so much competition, but you know, they were looking for a combination of like Dawson's Creek and Gossip Girl and you know delicious teenage sexy LGBTQ
edgy,
brave edgy stuff, and then you also had this connection to the cast, who were live tweeting during it, and suddenly over the summer the numbers went up. It's something like 400-500%.
Wow.
And we just had this formula on our hands, you know, and I got to play this complete nutter.
Well, I was just going to say, so Penelope Blossom, who sort of makes Cersei Lannister look like Snow White.
I mean, thank you. I think that's a huge compliment.
She is, honey, she is badass to the T, to the max. How has that been, playing such a fantastically evil villain? I mean,
yeah, so great. I played sort of slightly dodgy, like, you know, always like the sort of proper snooty type girlfriend, or like, you know, in the comedies in New Zealand that I did, but Penelope is outright dark, and then was based on a lot of I think like childhood trauma and like mummy issues that people needed to see on screen, and I could bring it, you know. I mean, it's just I know it from my family.
Yeah.
You know, it's almost like in the DNA, and so I mean, I got to, just the fact that I got to be maple bordered and all bad things, like, you know,
which is something everybody should try in their life just once, I think.
Yeah,
once, just to see what it's like, really.
Yeah. You know, being tortured repeatedly and tied up, and then doing my own torturing and poisoning, and then, you know, I just thought, well, after I'd had my house burnt down, what else would I be qualified for? And I said, well, what if it's the oldest profession in the world, you know, because so many of my female actor friends, you know, at some point have been asked to play prostitutes or whatever, and no one's ever asked me. So now I'm like, you know, I'm ready now, and I will now play a prostitute, but I'll
show you all, right?
And I mean, the clothes, just you know, the wardrobe designer,
beautiful,
Rebecca on Riverdale, just stunning, and we just had the best time dressing her up. And then, you know, the Maple Club being this like dominatrix club, it's just all hilariously camp and so much fun behind the scenes stuff. And I think the fans just loved it. You know, she's one of the favored villains in the you know, entertainment whatever online thing. So yeah, I think that was, and it's opened so many doors for me as well. So,
and I think it's really interesting too, because they probably, I mean, how much of that was on the page to begin with, or have the writers kind of seen that you're absolutely game and go, you know what, I can say that, I'll give it a go?
It's always a combo. I'm sure it's happened to you as well. You know, you start with a little bit, and then I mean, there's some dialogue with the writers and with the showrunner going, what if, which obviously then they write into their you know, take within the full holistic ensemble of Riverdale. But yeah, I think it's like watching the fun scenes with Penelope and the evil scenes, and going, oh, where could we take this? And she just became this weirdo on the edge of town, you know, like while Riverdale was sort of based in a community in the suburbia of it all, the Blossoms seemed to just be like doing their own thing, killing and poisoning and doing stuff with maple syrup on the edge of town.
Just a typical nice, you know, American family.
Just get in that barrel.
And the writers just popped up saying it's all you, the characters.
Oh, who's that? Oh, sweet. That's so kind. But no, it's always a collaboration, of course. And I think we just had loads of fun. Yeah.
And what a gift she's been, I think, for you, as you said, opening so many doors. Now, I would normally like to hand over to the fans, and there's so many questions. I don't think we're going to get through them in 15 minutes. I wanted to just quickly ask you, without any spoilers, obviously, what is next for Riverdale? Can you tell us anything?
Well, this is all out there, so, you know, I'm not telling you anything new, but maybe for the people watching, it's likely that the story's going to jump 5 years into the future. Can be, not guaranteed, but maybe.
Might be.
Yeah, but you know, we because of COVID, we missed out our last 2 episodes, I think. So,
Wow.
you know, those will be very revealing in terms of where the characters go,
Yeah.
because now it's their final year of school, you know. Yeah, and then if we bounce into the future, once they've finished their studies or their first forays into the world, there will be back in Riverdale, and it'll be really exciting to kind of, you know, be able to do that, because that's entertainment, right? You know, you get to
Yeah.
jump back in and go, what is this thing? What is this town now? What has
Yeah.
brought us together, and what is the mystery we'll be solving this time? Yeah.
Fabulous. Well, we can't wait. We're all on tenterhooks.
Great.
And also, just briefly before we hand over to questions and to everybody who's online, and I've had a few people email me some questions. I'm so impressed again that you use your very public platform in such a positive way to raise awareness for conservation and against the use of palm oil. Lots of people, I think, particularly today, they're mixed messages. People don't really know what they can do. What's the one thing that we can all do to make a difference?
In terms of conservation or palm oil?
Well, both actually, because it's sort of a linked question, I guess.
I mean, the one thing you can do is talk about it.
Yeah.
We each have a voice, and with social media and just speaking to friends and family, you open one person's eyes and ears, and it has such massive ripple effects.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so use that power, and with that, use that power when you shop. So when you consume, you have so much power. People will stop using palm oil if nobody will buy palm oil.
Yeah.
It's a little complicated because it gets hidden and not identified as that.
Mm-hmm.
But you as the consumer, it is your power to check ingredients and just go, I will use this and I will not use that. And fight for what you believe in, you know, whatever it is. I mean, for me, palm oil is close to my heart.
Yeah.
But for you, it might be animal cruelty, or it might be something else. And, you know, the key to so many of our problems these days, in terms of depression, OCD, ADHD, I mean, all of these issues have skyrocketed.
Yeah.
And so much of it is to do with what we put in our bodies. There are so many toxins that shouldn't be in our food. So you have to be aware like that. But then the other thing is that people are so disconnected from nature.
Yeah.
And you know, if you are constantly turning inward and hating your life and being feeling unhappy with yourself, the thing to do is go out. And if you can help other people, or help to save something, or go into forest, you know, go out of yourself and find a connection to nature again, and you will feel better. I know that's really hard if you live in a city and you don't have access to parks or water or walks. I mean, you can always walk, but you do have access to groups
Mm-hmm.
online. And then ultimately, if you care for something else, you will be able to go towards those people at some point. You know, you find your tribe, and I can't recommend enough connecting with another species. It's just the most nourishing thing. So if you can't now, find a way of, you know, supporting reforestation groups. Speak to those people, and one day, when you can, get on your bike or get into a car or get into a plane and go to these places and really feel what it means to be part of Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We're so disconnected. We're so medicated. The medication is about feeling disconnected.
Yeah. I feel incredibly lucky that both of us have had this extraordinary experience of growing up in South Africa and going to the bush, you know, on safari regularly. And that was such an extraordinary thing to do. On that note, I am going to hand over to some questions. So somebody was saying, have you ever considered writing an autobiography?
Oh my God, I don't have enough to tell. Thank you. That's
I don't
so
think that's
sweet,
not
but
true.
Maybe one day. I've never gotten into long form writing in book form, but I'm writing 3 feature films at the moment, and
Wow.
so at the moment, like I live in my mind and imagine scenarios and imagined conversations. But yeah, to kind of reminisce about my own life, I think I've got so much to do still before I get to that. But thank you. That's a very sweet question.
Next question. Lots of people have asked this question. Lily and Cole are together? Question mark. Are they together? Lily and Cole, are they together?
Okay. Listen to me. It's none of our business. They are private people, and they will let you know how they are when they are ready. And the basic bottom line is, I don't know. Because even when I speak to Lily and Cole, I don't say, so what's up with you guys? You know?
Somebody's just said, please, can you do the Penelope Blossom accent?
Oh my God. You want me to talk like Penelope? Okay. When I did my audition, they said, can you make her otherworldly? And Mrs. Danvers just did not move very much. She had a very straight back, and she was very controlled. And whenever she spoke to her daughter, she was not loving. There was a death behind her eyes. And that's what comes out in her voice.
I love it. Oh my God, it's a masterclass. Someone has said here, I've been following your works for 2 years now, and I'm continuously amazed by your talent, not only in acting, but also in directing and writing. As you know, I adore Bejazzle. So I would like to ask, what advice would you give someone who wants to become a screenwriter?
Read lots of good scripts. So download all the scripts that you adore and you think is good screenwriting, and then read those. You become a good screenwriter by reading good scripts. And then try again. Don't be shy, and ultimately show your work to people. If you keep it on your computer and in your drawer, you'll never improve. But one of the best things that I did, so I am working with the New Zealand Film Commission on the feature version of The Silk. By the same
amazing.
Yes, called Holy Days, which hopefully we'll be shooting next year. And I sickled, as you would say in South Africa, by myself for such a long time, and then I just got a script editor, and I paid a script editor, and oh my God, everything took off. And I learned so much from somebody whose job it is to go, no, this is working, this isn't working, / good, more of this, and you just work with somebody. Yeah, do that.
And how does that feel when they slash in your writing?
You get so upset, but then when you read it again and you go, oh, this is way better, then you start to respect the process. And also, of course, you have to find somebody who really understands what you are trying to do. So it took me a couple of tries, but yeah, it's hard, and you have to kind of like breathe through the instant like defensive response, and then just do the work, and then look at it and go, okay, I see, you taught me something here.
This has come up loads and loads and loads and loads. People saying, do you speak Russian? And yes, you did hear correctly. She did speak Afrikaans. Sy spreek Afrikaner.
Ek praat Afrikaans, maar nie baie goed nie. Hulle het altyd vir my gesê ek klink soos 'n soutpeel. But I do not speak Russian. I do a Russian accent, like last night with the read. Everybody was Russian, and it's probably a terrible over-exaggeration.
No, but it's great to do it like that. I like it.
It's so much fun. It's like having a hot egg in your mouth.
It's my favorite thing. I did a film in Romania 2 years ago, and I love the Romanians come across. It's quite sort of Russian in demeanor, but they have this fantastic thing. I was in a restaurant and I said to the guy, "Do you have a wine list?" And he just looked at me like, "Yes, of course we have wine list. We are a restaurant. Don't be stupid," you know, like. And I love
what
that.
Are we, animals?
You know, exactly. Hello from Argentina. So what is your I think they mean who is your favorite Riverdale character?
I've been loving well, it changes, but Veronica, when she sings, The scenes where they, well, it's okay. I sort of not really a clear answer, but when they intercut scenes, like when she's performing and then they have like fights, you know, when Archie's fighting in the ring, it's more like the intercutting, the vaudeville esque scenes, when Riverdale really takes off. Those are my favorites, where you know, it's all cut together and it's sexy and it's there's music and it's stylish and everything's moving from like a directorial and performance position point of view. Those are my favorites.
Fabulous. Somebody said, what was your favorite episode to film of Riverdale? That's quite a hard one, because
yeah, I mean, you know, for those of you who haven't seen Lock Your Ears, but at the end of season 3, you know, Penelope was revealed to be the Gargoyle King.
Woo! She
behind it all. Yeah. And so that was awesome, because I got to just do these fantastic chunks, really juicy scenes, and being super evil and actually showing the emotion of this twisted, tortured person that she is. Yeah. I loved that. But then I also really loved the beginning. You know, I think with any series, you love the beginning, because that was when we were establishing the essence of it. And I think, you know, the scenes where I was incredibly cruel to Cheryl, Madeleine Petsch's character, those were quite terrifying, and really good. You know, when I watch them back now, I kind of think, God, that poor woman. I was so cruel to her.
How did you guys, when you sort of met one another, like, did you have to kind of go at it right away, or did you?
We did, and we didn't get much time to bond, and it was quite hard. And I had to like do these things, and you know, me just being like me, there were times when I kind of like I'd grab her face or like whip her hair across her face and be like awful. And you never quite know whether it's okay with somebody. I mean, obviously you speak afterwards, like when I hit Machen Amek, when I, you know, it wasn't a real hit, but you know, you still get quite like physical, and then you never know how the other person feels, because you know, then it all moves so quickly. You're home and you're like, oh God, are you all right? But then turns out that Madeleine's from South Africa, and you know, and her family, you know, I've told this story, but her family owned the valley, Rustler's Valley, that we all used to explore when my husband and I kind of like fell in love. And so it was this strange, like other, like synchronicitous, otherworldly connection that I went, oh, well, we were meant to be connected, me and Madeleine.
I love that. Lots of people asking, do you speak Italian? Posso parlo italiano?
No,
I don't. Niente italiano. Parlez-vous français?
Je parle petit peu. So I learned French at school, but I am Italian background. My father is Italian Swiss. So that's why I am actually like dark-eyed, and my hair is dark brown naturally. It's just been red forever, because that's how people seem to like to cast me. But yes, I would love to know more about my Italian background.
I love that. Somebody has asked this about 75 times. I'm not entirely sure what it means, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Do you, where has it gone now? Do you ship Tony?
Do I ship Tony? I know. Do I ship Tony? I totally ship Tony. So ship is like relationship. It took me so long to try and understand that, because it was the only word that people used to say for about a year on Riverdale. I ship Tony, and I always joke that like the ship that everybody should be like shipping on Riverdale is Pony, which is like hashtag Pony, Penelope Tony. We should totally get it on. And actually in real life, I do ship, because she's also an animal lover, and she's a very kind-hearted person. Yeah. She nearly came to Borneo with me to save orangutans.
Yes, that must have been an amazing experience. Could you very quickly tell us, I mean, if you can, because I think we've got about 2 minutes left. Just sort of like the highlights. We've got exactly 2 minutes left.
I'm going to go back again. So anybody who cares about what's left of the rainforest there should really like look into it and follow me. But Sumatra and Borneo, we went into what is left of the natural rainforest, and we saw orangutan in their natural habitat.
Oh,
it's phenomenal, and we have to do everything we can to save them. It's just
absolutely. I think that's a perfect place for us to end. Nathalie Boltt,
Thank you so much, Suanne. Dank dir.
What a lovely, lovely pleasure this has been, and how lovely to catch up this way. I hope we get to do it in person sooner rather than later.
Yeah, absolutely. And so lovely to see you again, and thanks for reaching out. What a blast.
I know, absolutely. I've loved it, and we'll have to do it again. Season 2.
Yes, I want to see you. I want to see you in action. I can't wait to come to one of your plays.
Yay! Well, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you everyone for tuning in and watching the interview. If you've missed any of it, will be on IGTV and then also on YouTube on my Hathor Hosts channel. Have a great.
I'll share it as well. I'll share it.
Oh, thank you so much. Okay. How lovely to see you. Good night, everyone. Good afternoon. Good morning. Thank you very much. Tot ziens. Bye.